Hi, today we will be discussing about pediatric airway and how it is different from adult airway and what are the implications for us as pediatricians in managing a child with airway problems and intubating a child for mechanical ventilation. I am Dr. Pavitra Viswanathan. If you are following me for a long time, thank you. If not, please subscribe and hit the bell icon next to it so that you get immediate notifications whenever I post a video. Share this video among your colleagues, juniors, seniors and in academic groups so we can all learn pediatrics together. So let's get on with this topic now. So why? See, pediatrics patients rather are not small adults. Okay, they are different, they are unique. Okay, so their airway is also unique in that sense. It increases in size and different position until they achieve maturity by 8 to 14 years. So until then you have to treat them differently, you have to manage them differently. So the main differences lie in the size, shape and position of structures in the neck basically, and just one in the mouth. So let's see structures from top to bottom one by one. The first is tongue. Okay, the tongue is large compared to the oral cavity. Compared to adults, yes, but yes, see, for the size of the oral cavity, the size of the tongue is large and it is more closer to the palate. What is the clinical implication for us? A child who is supine and unconscious with a tongue so large can easily obstruct, falling back on the posterior pharynx. Okay, so what are you going to do practically about it? That is why in an unconscious child you ask them to turn towards one side rather than lying supine, that is one. And number two, when you use a laryngoscope blade, laryngoscopic stabilization of the tongue is difficult. You see that the tongue either pokes on a right side, pokes on the left side or completely not following the laryngoscope and lies on the side on its own. So this large tongue will require skilled stabilization by laryngoscopy. Next, epiglottis. The epiglottis is large compared to that of adults and it is floppy. Okay, and the hyoepiglottic ligament which attaches the epiglottis to the base of tongue is not strong enough, again contributing to the floppiness. What is the practical point here? Since it is floppy, a straight bladed laryngoscope is preferred compared to a curved blade. Curved blade is what you use for adults. Straight blade is what you use for young infants. Okay, so a straight blade is preferred to push this floppy epiglottis out of the way while you are intubating. Next, what about trachea? Trachea, yes, it is small, but the importance of this small diameter is this. The younger the child, younger the diameter. Makes sense, isn't it so? Very, it's like a no nonsense point. It doesn't require explanation. It's a fact. But the thing is, a minor compromise in radius, which can be due to infection, it can be due to inflammation like allergy, asthma, anything that reduces the radius increases the resistance and thereby increases the work of breathing secondarily. Next class I will be talking about the basic terminologies in ventilation where I will be discussing about all of these terms. Okay, so stay tuned for next class which might be coming up maybe tomorrow or day after. So yes, so resistance, capital R means resistance of the airway. Okay, small r is the radius of the airway. So when the child is breathing quietly, the airflow is laminar. Laminar is all of them are flowing in the same direction. Okay. So, a small difference in radius will increase the resistance 4 times, or in other words, the resistance of airway is inversely proportional to the 4th power of radius if the flow is laminar. But if the same thing becomes turbulent, okay, so the air is flowing in all sorts of direction, then in that case it is inversely proportional to the 5th power, okay, like in a distress, like in a child who has a narrowed airway. So that is why our practical point here is, if a child who is coming to you with respiratory distress or agitation due to some reason, that might be due to hypoxia, minimize the agitation. Okay, this minimized agitation will result in decreased turbulence. which will decrease the resistance to some extent until you initiate appropriate manner to increase the radius of the child's airway. Okay. So, smaller airway increases the resistance, increases work of breathing, and more so during a turbulent flow. That is why for us it is important to minimize agitation. Next, glottis. Okay. So, glottis, it varies in position depending upon the age. In infancy it is at C1, cervical, first cervical vertebra. Then slowly it goes down to C2 and C3 until it reaches the C3, C4 position by 7 years and C4 and C5 position by adult age. This high position in the cervical region means the glottis opening is placed at the base of tongue, isn't it so? So, glottis is where you want to insert your endotracheal tube, correct? So, this position which is up superior and also anterior, okay, it is tilted 10 degrees anteriorly from the vertical line at sternal notch. Both of them are important for you to intubate the child. Why? Because this airway will be hidden by the tongue during scoping. When you are putting in a laryngoscope, you will think as if I have gone in just a short distance, but you will not be able to see the glottic opening at all, because you have already passed the glottic opening which was placed superiorly. So, when you withdraw the laryngoscope, you will see the epiglottis flopping back and you will see the glottic opening. Got my point? So, remember, the glottis in a young child is placed anteriorly and superiorly. This also poses an additional problem of intubation via the nasal route. Again, this anterior position will be difficult to access when you are intubating nasally compared to that of an oral intubation. Next, narrowest part of airway. Narrowest part of airway, this has been a long standing MCQ. I think all of you know this. But some things that I would like to highlight here are, when they did MRI on quietly breathing pediatric patients, what they noticed was the actual smallest transverse diameter of the larynx was at or below the vocal cords, which is similar to adults, isn't it so? But the difference is that these vocal cords and subglottic areas are distensible. Okay. There is one other area which is non-distensible, which is the cricoid ring. That is why this becomes the smallest functional part of an infant's airway. Note that I am not talking about anatomical, this is the smallest functional part of an infant airway, because this is rigid, does not expand. What is the practical point for us here? The practical point for us here is, since the cricoid ring is the smallest part, even an uncuffed tube, you putting in an uncuffed tube will sit snugly within the cricoid ring and make sure there is no air leak. And second, the opposite end of it. If you insert a larger tube which does not enter the cricoid ring and you try to push it through this narrowest airway, it can cause mucosal injury. Okay. So, if you do the correct size tube, even an uncuffed tube is good enough to prevent air leaks because it is a adequate seal and snug fit. On the other hand, if you put in a large diameter tube, it can cause mucosal injuries. Next, what about the subglottic area? So, now we covered till glottis, isn't it? So, from tongue we came down slowly, tongue, supraglottis, epiglottis and all we discussed, then glottis was discussed. Now coming to subglottis. See, subglottis is smaller, yes, it is more compliant compared to adults, and their supporting cartilages are underdeveloped, okay, they are not very supporting per se, okay. And the mucosa of the subglottis, or rather the mucosa of the whole larynx, when you see, it is tightly adherent to vocal cords and epiglottis compared to that of subglottis. Okay. So, what is the clinical points for us here? Whenever there is an upper airway obstruction, like that of a croup or epiglottitis, due to this underdeveloped supporting cartilage, the trachea can collapse completely, resulting in stridor. Even an extrathoracic foreign body which is migrating up and down, that can also cause a similar picture. Any inflammation of cord or epiglottis, it will cause anatomical distortion because the mucosa is tightly adherent to those areas, whereas the inflammation in subglottis is usually contained in that area because the mucosa is not tightly adherent. There is space for the inflammation to expand, or rather how to say, the products of the inflammation to occupy space, whereas this tightly adherent is non-forgiving Hence, it results in too much anatomical distortion, resulting in difficult intubation. Few other points are, one is large occiput. So, these are points that large occiput is outside the airway, but that is something that you have to remember. See, large occiput per se can give a normal sniffing position to the child, okay. But if the child is unconscious, this head can come forward, resulting in obstruction of the airway. So, you can open the airway of a child who is unconscious into your sniffing position by just lifting up the chin. Okay, lifting up chin will result in sniffing position, bringing alignment to the airway. Or on the other hand, you can place towel under shoulders. Note that I am not talking about head. You already have a large head, you don't need to make it big by adding towels under the head. Okay, so you can add towels under the shoulders again to help achieve the optimal position for an unobstructed airway. The large tonsils and adenoids in case of an infection or an inflammation can cause bleeding when you are trying to intubate, can cause obstruction to airway, and it can cause a difficult intubation and at the end of the day. Small cricothyroid membrane. See, this is important because you are trying to intubate a child, and if you have failed and if nobody is able to intubate due to whatever reason, one of the last resorts may be to place a cricothyrotomy, isn't it so? You can place a cricothyrotomy only if there is adequate space for you to place a cricothyrotomy. But the membrane here is very small, so needle cricothyrotomy is difficult in case of a difficult airway. Okay. So, these are all the differences. Let us just quickly run through. You have a large tongue which is closer to palate, which can fall back and obstruct, a large epiglottis which is floppy. So, you have to push the epiglottis away with a straight blade laryngoscope. Trachea, small diameter. So, smaller increase, even a small increase in, small decrease in diameter can cause a very much increase in resistance. Then higher placed glottis, anteriorly placed glottis. So, you have to place the laryngoscope properly to visualize the airway. Narrowest part of airway, even though it is vocal cords and subglottis, since they are distensible, cricoid ring becomes the smallest functional part of an airway. Subglottis wise, it is more compliant, so it can fall upon itself or collapse upon itself, resulting in a stridor. And anatomical distortion if there is inflammation in the vocal cords or epiglottis. Large occiput positioning is important to have an unobstructed airway. Large tonsils in case of problems, and small cricothyroid membrane will prevent a needle cricothyrotomy. I think this is enough if you know about the differences between pediatric and adult airway and the practical implications. Thank you all for patiently listening to me. Bye bye, take care and all the best.